if we decide there's a bit of time, I would like to talk about grant applications. And like I say, if there's a bit of time, it could be a quick intro discussion, it could be more detailed, just start a conversation.
Okay. Just for your information, I'm going to make a request to the council. What was it? For us to hold a special council meeting right after this. An unannounced council meeting where we needed everybody to be here with days notice. And so that may or may not affect
a regular meeting or in camera meeting?
well, it's technically a regular meeting that goes in camera.
It's a special meeting that closes to the public.
Yes.
Your Worship, that leads to the question that was just going through my mind, which is how do we determine if we have a bit of time?
We're done by 5:30.
That's pretty kind of subjective.
Well, basically what we do is we add it to the agenda. When we get to that item, we basically put it out how we're feeling, and I'm assuming that Councillor Colson would accept.
And if we've got another meeting, thanks for the heads up, because we've got another meeting on that after all new slides on it. Okay.
Okay, so
I
what I've
want to meet
done.
my kids tonight, so I want to get out here too.
Okay. I've added as number 5 grant applications before public participation and adjusting the numbering. Therefore, any other additions or deletions? Motion to approve the agenda as amended. Councillor Volkov, Councillor Neary. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. All right.
On that cue.
I'm set.
We're rolling. Okay. So, she sits and then it goes. Yeah. So today is your first kick at a draft of the council procedure bylaw. So it's an opportunity to talk about your meeting procedures, and I guess some of the things we'll cover is why now, why do we have parliamentary procedures, what are the procedure bylaw requirements and options. We'll do a quick overview of draft 1, and you've got it, so I can just hit the highlights on that. And then really what we're looking for as staff is to ask you, where do you want some improvement on the bylaw and on the procedures? What do you think are problem areas? And so we're looking for your feedback. Just like any other major policy document, we view the procedure bylaw as the basis of the business that you do, and it will require, we respectfully suggest, more than one meeting, because there are many different options, and we'll talk about that a bit more as we go along. So why now? So this is your procedure bylaw. It's council's procedure bylaw. It was adopted in April 2004. It replaced the first bylaw, the first procedure bylaw, the 2003 one. So it's definitely time for version 3, which we've labeled as bylaw 118. It's common for a new council when they come into office to update, to review and update the procedure bylaw to suit their preferences where possible. Some of the things are required terms, some of them aren't. But I think the one that I've seen most commonly changed with councils is perhaps the meeting schedule. It's common that they, as a body, depending on what their requirements are, would look at that and make a change to that. And then with evolution of technology, things like electronic meetings, things like that, has been a common change too. And then if they've been on council for a while and they've been having some problem areas, then you'll see some different clauses in the bylaws. And you can almost tell what's the story in that municipality when you see the length and the attention that's paid to some things that are not in anyone else's bylaw at all. So it's definitely your document as a body, and it's yours to make it what you want it to be. The biggest thing is that we want it to not impede you doing business. It's supposed to facilitate you doing business. It's supposed to make it more effective and efficient, and of course still transparent to the public what you're doing. What we're engaging here is consistent with the 2016-2018 strategic priorities, communication, engagement, transparency, and of course the goal of doing bylaw reviews and updates. So why parliamentary procedures? So everyone's heard of Robert's Rules. It's the most commonly used book. I mean, there's a few places that are using Borno, but Roberts is it. So his famous quote is, "Where there is no law, but every man does what is right in his own eyes, there is the least of real liberty." And then, of course, Elimina, he goes on regularly to say that the overall goals of shared decision-making are to achieve quality decisions, to achieve them together, and to do so at a comfortable pace, not too fast, not too slow. I quote Ellie a lot because I've been to a lot of his training sessions, and he has a very reasonable manner of how he wants to simplify things so that your work proceeds. He says one of the overall purposes is to facilitate progress, to move things along, create the necessary structure for dealing with complex and controversial issues, and enable members to participate in decision-making on an equal basis, protecting the rights of the majority, the minority, the individual, the absentee, and the organization. When you look at parliamentary procedures, in course things that, there's some basic things. And so some of these basic ones are not in your bylaw currently, and they will just be standard Robert's rules. But if you want them brought into the bylaw, we will talk about that at the end. Majority rule, minority rights, member rights, absentee rights, one question at a time, one person, one vote. Only members present can vote. Changing action previously decided upon, and you've seen that recently, and there's a lot of discussion about that in a number recently about reconsideration. Following your own specific rules, so your council procedure bylaw and the hierarchy of provincial laws. So in Ellie's class, and I was actually in this room for that class in 2012, when I was still working in Falcon Beach. He talked about, one of his sessions is effective decision making. He talked about dysfunctions, not about this council, but just generally bodies and organizations in general. And he said the thing that really brings them down is if they're not prepared for meetings. So for us, preparation means good structure of agenda, getting it out to you in time so that you can prepare. Dealing with business in a rush. Motions, your way your business is recorded in your minutes, phrased on the fly. So that's where we've gone to the putting a recommendation in the agenda so that you've got a starting point. Certainly if there's other options, and you might put something else forward. But as much as possible, if you can give us advance notice so we can help you, craft motions so they're not done on the fly. Says one of the big dysfunctions is last-minute additions to an agenda. Pre-meeting promises, short tempers, hot temperatures, long and slow-moving meetings, leaks from closed meetings, too many items behind closed doors, laptops, Blackberries, and cell phones in the meetings. So how do these relate to council procedure bylaw? Well, I touched on a few of those. But like a couple of those last ones, those are not in a lot of procedure bylaws, but I'm seeing them in some of the newer procedure bylaws. So this issue of not bringing technology or not engaging in use of technology during a meeting, there's a few municipalities that brought that in recently. And I know I've been in municipalities where we sought legal advice on not having, I think when we first had it set up in Squamish with us, was actually computer stations, and they were communicating with each other. So it was sort of undermining the transparency of the process. They shouldn't be having discussion outside of the public. Community charter. So when we talk about requirements for the procedure bylaw, they're very basic statements in the community charter. And the draft bylaw before you covers those, but there's nuances to each one that you can put your touch on. So what it says is you have to establish rules for procedure for the council meetings, how a resolution is passed and bylaws adopted. The fact of the matter is, within the legislation, it puts a lot of requirements on that, particularly on the adoption of bylaws and what the schedule is for it. But there are some things, like some municipalities will put a phrase in their bylaws saying what the motion would say. But a lot of municipalities are not doing that, and the template doesn't have that. Establishing rules of procedure for council committee meetings, most common that it's just where it can apply, it's the council procedure. Providing for taking and certifying of minutes at council and council committee meetings, that standard wording is in the bylaws, in your foreign bylaw. Identify posting places for public notices issued by the municipality. Now this is the lowest standard that goes in the bylaw. we all maintain a much higher standard than what's in the bylaw. So, and I'll explain that. We have issuing public notices. When that clause first came out and the template came out, some people were thinking that they would issue their public notices on their bulletin board and on their website. Now we're putting language in there that it's on the website when available, because we wouldn't want any business of council to be overturned because, my God, the website was down one day when somebody went to look at it and they didn't get their proper notice. So we've been adjusting some of those things. So certainly we're going to still continue to use every technology we can to give out notices. Establish procedures for designating a council member as the acting mayor. You're very familiar with that. The one we'll talk about, the change in here, is just sort of noting what our practice is, that it's done at the inaugural and then it's done when you see fit at other times. Identify the day within the first 10 days of November, which is the new language in the community charter, for the first regular council meeting following a general local election, and any other matter if not conflicting with legislation. And I have had a question previously about the scheduling of that inaugural meeting, and it is within the legislation. We can't change that. So the question about when someone's council's elected, having the next council, or having that council hold meetings still until the next council is sworn in, that's within the legislation. It's within their powers, and we can't change that. And sometimes there's reasons why the council that, the former council still needs to meet and do business, that we can't fetter them from doing that. And any other matter if not conflicting with legislation. So that's where some of the municipalities are going on and adding some other things. So brief review of the template. Now I sent you a link to that. I didn't actually put it in the package because it is a little dated, and it's 2004. So some of the language has been changed by other municipalities, and I think the province expects that. The one thing I wanted to highlight was some of the things that we haven't got in here yet, and it's because we need more discussion with council about those. So I think the mandatory inaugural meeting, we talked about that. The second clause that they had in the template was if a quorum wasn't sworn in time, and then what the corporate officer would do. But that language is verbatim in the community charter, so we haven't included that in your bylaw because we try not to just repeat what's in the legislation. Time and location of meetings. Ours is a little bit different. We're trying to go to instead of doing the two-step thing where you put a schedule in the bylaw and then you do up a schedule, you amend it, you approve it. We're trying to get it so that it's more general in the bylaw, and then you do the schedule and then we publish that. And our practice, some places they do that in December. Our practice has been to do it in September, so everybody has lots of notice in advance. Because as you know, there's always things that come up. If you pick any date, schedule, whether it's the first Monday, third Monday, there's always something that will come up that will change that in some years, whether it's convention, statutory holidays, what have you. I think the big question for staff is if at this point you want to do something radically different and not, Mondays. That's the kind of stuff that we need to know end of today so we can start working on the next draft. Notice of council meetings, mandatory with required content, so that's information is required that we give the notice and give out the annual schedule. Notice of meetings is also required. Okay, so the next one, clause 8, is electronic meetings, and that is optional. And that's one where at the end they'll look for some information from you on that. At this point with the electronic meetings, we're not quite there, being able to do it. We're having an installation next week. There's things we would need to test. You can't just have an electronic meeting. You have to make sure that the technology's there and reliable, and that they're able to, not only that you can hear them, but they can hear you. And then there's a whole myriad of questions that we will ask that you'll need to respond on. So the minimum is that it's for special open meetings. That's what some municipalities have gone with. It's just for special open meetings. Other municipalities have gone with its regular meetings too. So for some, and I think the province spoke to it in, I think the open meetings booklet, they spoke to it a bit that they preferred that it was only done when the meeting, a special meeting could not have happened if they didn't include some people electronically. But certainly it's been standard practice, well, it's been in the legislation for regional districts for many years. And it's been in for municipalities, since 2004 anyway. But a lot of municipalities have not gone ahead with it because the technology needs to be there too.
Councilor Ginsburg.
Clause 8.
Oh, sorry, that was on the explanatory notes to procedure bylaw. I sent a link to it. It's the template from the province. It's not in the agenda package because it's a 2004 document and it's just off their website. But it's their electronic meeting. So the questions we'd be asking, and you can think about it and get back to us later, is if we want to add it based on the fact that by the time we get through this process, we expect that we'll have the technology. And that it'll be at that level where we'll be able to do it. But then you're going to need to think about whether it's certain meetings. In some procedure bylaws, they've identified that the chair is not allowed to participate electronically. There's just all kinds of different limitations and nuances. Certainly, it's very common that closed meetings are not done electronically.
So through this, when you're referring to electronic meetings, you're really, for the most part, referring to when one person can't get the meeting and they plug in electronically.
Yes, so
not
they're
electronic meetings. It's one individual, or I guess.
Well, it is whatever you want to make it, but we have to define that within the bylaw, and that's a very good example. In some municipalities, they've said there can't be more than two who participate electronically. In other places, they've said, well, there has to be at least one in the room. So there's all kinds of different variations, and following, starting with baby steps might be a good way to go. So you want to think about where that would work for you, and certainly we would be audio at this point, telephone. Okay, so that's electronic meetings and designation of the member to act in place of the mayor. So I already highlighted that the change we made there from the template from what we had before was that before it said that it was done at the inaugural meeting and that was it for the term. And that's really never been the practice in any place I've worked and wasn't here. That it's done at the inaugural and then, and some of them say it's done annually and a lot of places don't do it annually. So we've done a broader wording that it's done when you feel it's required. And at the inaugural. And attendance of public meetings, that's standard. Okay, minutes of meetings to be maintained and available to public. What you have in the bylaw is what's in the template. It's just the basic, it's legibly recorded, certified, signed by the mayor. The one nuance we've got in there is adding in, which is sort of best practice in other bylaws, adding in that signed by the mayor or the member presiding at the meeting or at the next meeting at which the minutes are adopted. Because ours previously just said member presiding and it should be both, particularly when you're changing terms. So with minutes, like some people, a lot of municipalities have a policy on what's in their minutes, and some have got a little bit in their procedure bylaw, and some have not. So there's lots of room there. And calling the meeting to order, we previously had 30 minutes in the bylaw, and now we have 15 minutes in the bylaw. So what that means is that's the amount of time we need to sit here and wait until someone arrives in order to meet a quorum.
Don't make it a habit, Will.
And
And so that definitely is an option. You pick your time, but 15 minutes is pretty common.
But we heard you coming from way far away. I'm waiting for the
My copy
electronic
still
meeting.
says this.
No, are you looking at the existing or at the new?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The existing has 30, the new has 15. And then there's a little clause there about agenda deadlines, and I know we're going to have a lot of discussion about that. We can hit that one.
We'll beat that one, I'm sure.
Yeah, and order of proceedings. So order of proceedings in business. In places, it's really changing substantially of how they're ordering their business. And so that, again, is what's suitable for you. We recommend having certain things at the beginning so that we can give them times, like a public hearing or delegation. Other things are fine to go later. Late items, that again is, and we'll go over those questions later, but an issue for discussion of what you want to be the standard. And when I talk about our process that we've been doing, I've had input from members of council and from public too. And on some points, they're totally radically different opinions. So hopefully today we'll get some clarification on where you want to go with some of these things. It is yours, whatever's in this draft, we don't own that. Staff doesn't own that. It's a starting point for you to work on. Voting at meetings, more like what ours is. And I think the rest of these items in the provincial one, none of them are. Okay, so on the only other one on the provincial one is they've got reconsideration by council member, and then they've got a notation there, mayor's right of reconsideration found in section 131 of the Community Charter, and that's a note we should retain so that people recognize that it is a totally different process than when members of council bring forward for reconsideration. So that's something we've added into this bylaw. Previously, here in the existing bylaw, we didn't have it for council members, and it's pretty common that you would. So we've added that in. Adjournment. Continue a council meeting after 2 minutes. So it's got adjourning by affirmative vote. So in the provincial one, they say, there's options. You can put by a 2/3 motion. You put simple majority. So those are the types of notes they have in their bylaw, their template. For bylaws, the description of how bylaws are processed and handled, except for the statement about, the bylaws must be signed. That's a statutory requirement. And then also the reference to the provincial legislation requirements. That's a bit different. And resolutions. So I think I've probably spent enough time on the province's templates. It really is a bit out of date. So, draft 1. So we have choices here. We can go through section by section, or we can jump to your questions. And I have questions that were submitted in writing today, and I can go to those first if you want to do it by questions. So
Sections or questions? Councilor here?
I prefer to go by sections because then we're not jumping all over the place.
Yeah.
And we're not missing people's questions by skipping.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Councilor Coles?
Yeah, general question first. So I'm assuming you all submitted feedback in some way. Is there a list available of what feedback everyone submitted to kind of streamline where we're headed?
Not really, no. It isn't.
Okay.
I have all any that were submitted in writing. I have them. Some people phoned things in. I wrote stuff in out. So yeah.
Anything else of a general nature? Okay. So go section by section.
Section by section. So one of the comments I'll make is that usually when we're writing procedure any bylaws, when we add a definition section, we will capitalize and bold the definition. But because I wasn't sure, I usually do that as the last stage. So because you never know if things are coming out or going in, and so that's something that would happen. a general question I was asked was whether the italicized portions of various sections, are these italicized portions for explanation only, or will they be part of the bylaw? And if they are to be part of the bylaw, then why are they italicized? And, valid comment, we've used the italics in a number of ways, and maybe I need to think of some way that I can do it that it's less confusing. So we have the base standard that any reference to a piece of legislation, like the community charter, is always italicized in our reports and in our bylaws. And then we have something where people are quoting something. So like on page 5 here, page 4 of the bylaw, the unanimous consent is sort of has a little conversation there, and it's italicized the comments that would be made. So that's one form where it's italicized. And then later on, give you an example, I know one that was jumping out at me was where we listed the order of the agenda. And there it was more explanatory. And I've seen, we've done bylaws before where there's a lot of things that come out of legislation, or they're just like coaching comments, and they're put in italics with a square bracket. And so we'll try to standardize that. It is something that could stay in the bylaw, but it's not like the example of the order of the agenda. The headings for the agenda have little descriptors in italics behind them. Those descriptors wouldn't go on the agenda. It would just be the titles that are on the agenda.
Okay, Councillor Philpott is a general.
You mentioned earlier in the presentation there that you try not to repeat what's in legislation, like in the charter. And on one hand, I can understand that because I imagine it would be, there's a lot of detail there. But on the other hand, a lot of the time the public will just flip to this thinking it's it. And I don't know whether there's some compromise there where some key items you might want to put in there just...
And that was my third example of italics, and I didn't really explain that. We had I'm trying to think what it was an animal control bylaw or something. No, it was an election bylaw. And we had in square brackets the sections that were out of the community charter. And there was an explanatory statement at the beginning that these square bracket italics were explanatory, and they referenced people back to the legislation. So like the statement about the mayor's reconsideration section in the community charter, that would be an ideal thing, to have the square brackets and italics. So something like, we were asked about, well, where's the quorum? Why doesn't it define quorum in here? And that's something straight out of the community charter. It's in section 129 of the community charter defines what the quorum is. So that, that's good feedback. That's probably something that we can try to work in here, descriptive things in brackets with italics that take people back to the community charter to tell them those other basic things. Things like every member of council must vote. That sort of stuff. Yeah.
Councillor,
Well, just a follow-up there. I mean, I don't know if if it's an option to put something right up the front that says that this doesn't include all the things that are required under the charter.
Yeah.
So you need to look at both documents or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Because that way, at least if they look and they don't see it, they come questioning you. You tell them that it's in the charter, and you can point out that we do state there that some of the requirements are in the charter and not repeated.
Right.
Councillor Bizzle.
Yeah, something as basic as quorum, if it's section 129, I think that needs to be repeated in the procedure, because that's a really basic item that somebody wants to look at quickly. Because some quorum, special quorum, majority, what is the quorum? I think that really needs to be. So we're going section by section. Should that be in the definitions and then repeat what section 129 says? That might be a nice place to put it because it's right at the beginning. The second thing that you alluded to were the italics, and we have lots of italics here. And what I'm looking at is section 14, order of proceedings in business. Some of these, as you said, appear to be program notes or explanations, and as a bylaw, I don't think that's appropriate, but just an explanation. However, if you go down to item 14.1F, public input period, I think that ought to be included, or have items F1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 similar to item 14.1Q, public clarification period. But those various things could be broken out into either sub-paragraphs or leave it as a part of that section.
Yeah.
But it's confusing, and I just know from legislation, it's confusing if you see something in italics, because to the legal folks that means it's something that's going to be promulgated in the future, or it's not part of that. It's confusing.
Yeah. And just to expand on that too, there are some bylaws that we've seen that have like the input period. It'll just say public input period, and then lower in the body of the bylaw, not as a subsection, but within the body later on, there's a whole section on public input. And the same with the consent agenda. There's a whole section on consent agenda. And, we can expand to that.
Okay. Any other general comments, questions, concerns? Are you looking like you're going to say something, or not?
Me?
John?
No, I'm kind of just following along.
Okay.
Are we at part 1 yet?
We are now. Okay, part 1. Questions, comments, concerns? Okay.
I have a comment.
Comment.
Coming. So I think I'm working on the bylaw that you sent out to Council 1.0 maybe. And at that time, public notice posting places had the website on it as well. I don't see that on this draft, but I'll read out the comment that was added. It says, delete and the district's website. No, intent is still to use the district's website, post notices, etc. on the website. However, deletion is recommended to ensure that there's no challenge that a statutory posting requirement was not fulfilled if the website was temporarily down or not accessible. Makes sense?
I'm not following where we are.
I don't think...
This is part 1. We're
Yep.
looking
Yeah,
at part one.
Public definitions.
The definition there.
Oh, is it that? Okay.
The original one
Gotcha.
I had
Okay.
said, and the
Yeah.
district's website as well.
Gotcha.
I would like to see us mention all sites where we post stuff to. Personal opinion, so we now have social media presence as well. Very few people come down to look at the notice board to figure out when a meeting is. And so I recognize the concern raised, but maybe we put some other language in there where the official notice place is down there, but the other notice places are here. And
We have to be careful because the procedure bylaw itself, one where I say it is a legal document. And so the more public notice we put in there in an attempt to inform the residents themselves, we could, in my opinion, potentially trip a legal problem in an attempt to be more transparent for them.
yeah, but if our website's down, force majeure or some other thing will kick in to protect us, right? If you deliberately don't post it, that's one thing. If a lightning storm takes down the website, something else would protect us.
Trudy?
There would still be a cost to getting that protection.
Sorry?
There would still be a cost to getting that protection. So
Force
if
majeure
someone,
is a recognized legal
Pardon?
tenant. Force majeure is a recognized legal tenant.
but if someone took exception that we had not met a statutory posting requirement,
Yeah.
they can still go and file with the court to have the bylaw overturned. There's still a cost attached to that. But the idea of us publicizing where we're communicating, yeah, absolutely. There's some work to be done in this area, and we've got, I've looked at other websites where they have a list of how does the district engage the public, and they have that whole list. And I think that's certainly something that we need to do some work on, particularly with our new technology that we're using, promoting it.
Councillor Heaney?
But I think Councillor Colson's comment about that it can be covered off by the language we put around it. The official site for posting notices is down here, but you can go to these other places to find information. But the official site is here to cover ourselves.
And there is reference to the website, yes.
Yeah, so that's pretty easy.
So there is reference
Yes, I did.
Under special meetings.
under special meetings.
Or anytime it's under special.
It's also on page 5.
The definitions contains reference to the website.
But the public
Every
notice
time where it's got
board is
notice.
Simply the notice board. I thought it could use improvement. It seems like we're going backwards.
Like for notice for community home meetings, it says posting a copy of the notice of public notice posting place, posting a copy on the district's website if this option is available. So I know I repeated that like several times, so I think it's in a few spots.
Just question the staff, recognizing we have bylaws and we have policies. Could it not be encompassed with the, let's call it the legal notification within the bylaw and the more desired posting, for example,
Yeah.
under policy?
Yeah.
Because we can vary, or when I say it, violate policy almost at will. Bylaws are bylaws are a different creature, right, with regards to legal enforcement and that sort of stuff. Thoughts?
I mean, from the standpoint of that, it's, yeah, you're absolutely correct. I mean, a policy is only as good as the intent of people to follow it, whereas a bylaw, you have an enforcement aspect to it. So, I mean, and I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but statutory requirement is that we post notice at the district, and we also, in some cases, have to post 2 consecutive times in the papers for things. I mean, there's
Those are
certain
other types of notices.
yeah, so other types of notices. So as long as we, to fulfill Councillor Coulson's comments there, I mean, if we said that our primary location of posting is the district hall, however, the district will post secondary in all these locations or something along those lines, that I think that fulfills the social media thing, it fulfills the online portion in case, you know, the world shakes and the only thing we can do is get out a typewriter and post it on the wall there. That doesn't violate. The concern that Trudy's going back with is, if somebody wanted to take a run at something and we say we'll absolutely unequivocally post on these 5 places and we don't one of them because something goes down, then we've failed to post legally, and it'll come back to haunt us. So if we have to be absolutely sure that in all times, places that we can post 100% of the time. So saying a primary place and secondary would be the following, if applicable, is probably the best way to say this.
So are you recommending policy or in bylaw?
That's really where it falls to Trudy in that point, which Trudy's going to turn around and say that.
I think because we have evolving abilities and technology, I think it's more suited to policy. Because now that I'm looking at this is already out of date. Because since this is drafted, it says website, and since it was drafted, like we're doing some other things too. But I do, like we have gone, but this is, I've seen this in many municipalities where they say if this option is available. What we want to stay away from is saying that the website is our public notice and posting place. We can't include it in that definition. We can't make a condition that, when they're telling us by law we have to state what the public notice posting place is, it has to be clean. It can't say, and on Tuesdays it's going to be this, and if this is working, it's going to be that. It has to be a clean statement. So that we've just sort of gone one beyond, and in the sub we've got posting on a copy on the district's website if this option is available. Now that is in the special council, the committees, and in the committee of the whole. But I do see that it's not in the regular, and so we could add a clause under the regular to include the website, and then add something to our communications to identify those other ways that we communicate as a policy.
Yeah, most of it's been said. I was really leaning towards the policy and or statements that state something that we will endeavor to, so that it's not absolute.
We may.
But we may. So I agree. I think it's policy.
So maybe staff could, recognizing the expectation is this is going to come back.
Yeah. So in the spots where we've got posting a copy on the district's website, we can add in and through other media and locations if available. But then it's still not in the definition as our posting place, and that's
Which
our
matches up the legislation.
Yeah.
Any further on part 1? Part 2. Councilor Neary.
Thank you, Your Worship. I had a question around item time and location of regular council meetings, so that's section 5, item 3B. It says regular council meetings may be postponed to a different day, time and place by the mayor, provided the corporate officer is given at least 2 days' notice. And it's just a question of clarification. I'm wondering why or how that would take place.
I'm with you. Why?
Because it just extrapolating that, I was thinking, well, okay, maybe the mayor, unless it's an emergency, maybe.
Yeah.
An emergency event.
Yeah. It gives us an option when there's something unexpected. But they've never given us the broader option of for a regular meeting of just canceling it. Like, I haven't seen that in anybody's. They've got the option of canceling and posting and that for special. But for regular, it's always like at that location.
I guess I'm just thinking extremes
But there's nothing to qualify.
as to under what conditions.
Yeah.
That's a new addition too from the one we saw previously.
That's the only kind of reservation. It basically gives the mayor carte blanche, to postpone a meeting.
Why not do this?
I mean, reasonably, anybody reasonable would say, well, no, that's in special circumstances, but it doesn't say that.
You get a German person, and there we go. Councilor Gilbert?
Okay, well, the clause above that provides some reins. It says that regular council meetings may be varied or canceled by council resolution, provided that 2 consecutive meetings are not canceled. So that's a rope around the ring. My suggestion is that we add the words "or postponed" after canceled, because if the mayor gets into the habit of postponing meetings, let's put the rope around the 2 postponements. After that would have to be a very good reason. So you can cancel to no more than 2 meetings, and you can't postpone more than 2 meetings. Now, whether if by adding the words "or postponed" after the word "cancel" would tie into clause B, I'm not entirely certain, unless we say.
It's by council.
One's about council
Yeah.
action, one's about
Yeah.
mayor's action.
So we need to take that provided through the cancel and put that in after the word mayor.
So it'd have to be postponed no more than 2 times, or some wording in there, just to
Leash on it.
exactly.
Councilor Popos?
Well, I was just going to say 3B, if it was to say regular council meetings may, under special circumstances, be postponed to different dates, or something of those effects.
So that's where you're going to. It's different. Councilor Colson?
Yeah, question. This isn't one of the powers that the community charter outlines for the mayor that I'm aware of.
No.
So I'm curious, where did this come from? Why
Came
is
out of
this
the template from the province.
Came out of template for the problem.
The exact wording.
I might be putting.
It's shown as optional.
Yeah.
It's got the bracket showing it as optional.
Right.
But, yeah.
I don't want to speak on behalf of the mayor, but this has disaster written all over it to me.
Some mayors don't show up.
Only if it's abused.
But
It's never happened
what's
to
the
me.
use, right? This, I don't know.
I guess where I struggled with it was, first of all, it's meant to be used supposedly for regular council meetings, so I'm kind of on why would that exist for regular? And then again, kind of what circumstance would it be required for regular? Special, I get it.
Because we are looking for justifications as to why, which some may accept, some may not accept, and it could all go sideways.
Mr. McCray can give us a little bit of light.
My comment to that, Your Worship, is that there's one or two ways of dealing with this. The obvious one is that council just removes this clause. It's an optional piece. We can walk away. The other one would be to alleviate concerns. I'm sitting here mulling over reasons why. Again, emergency management, the mayor ends up being the spokesperson for the municipality. They could end up doing damage control during an event, and I'm likely able to make the meetings, things along those lines. So council may want to put their mind towards if they wish to keep this clause in there that is very set parameters at that point, either natural disaster, something along those lines. It does sound like there is a lot of work that needs to go into this clause should council wish to keep it.
Well, and natural disaster is where my head originally went, but I'm thinking, well, what we do then is just convene a special council meeting and vary the schedule, time, location, or otherwise from regular meetings as a result. As opposed to me saying, guess what, guys? We're at the pub 2 days from now. Councilor Gilbert.
I say strike it. The Machiavellian, the dark side view is important vote coming up. Mayor knows we'll all be here today, but not tomorrow, and so he postpones it to avoid a vote. And I'm certainly not saying that the mayor would do that, but that's the dark side, and so I think we should just avoid it and strike it.
Councilor.
I think Councillor Gusbrack makes a good point. My response to what the mayor just said would be that in the event of an emergency, you have to be able to convene. If you strike this completely, in the event of an emergency, to convene a meeting or change a meeting according to this has to be by council resolution. And by virtue of the fact that in an emergency council might not be able to meet, you can't do that. So maybe that was the point of this, that the mayor kind of has that single power to say, we need to, but the qualification is what are the special circumstances under which he or she is able to do that, and that needs to be defined. So
either that, or we just agree to all be reasonable when there's an emergency.
yeah,
Well,
yes.
but there's just with regards to the special council meeting versus this, the emergency situation in my mind is going to be a special meeting. A special meeting without the unanimous consent of all council needs 24 hours notice. To move this regular meeting, it's 48 hours notice.
Yeah.
So I'd strike the whole
Strike
thing.
it.
Yep.
Okay. I can look at
So are we striking 3A and B, or just no B?
B.
B.
B?
Yeah.
Done!
Done.
Other concerns, part 2. I was just trying to understand what is it? 5.2b. The last part of it. Okay.
Okay, so we're not,
Two Mondays, holiday happens, that's fine, but it says, in which case a council meeting may not be held that week. May as in not allowed, or may as in we might have one, we might not.
So the difference with this clause over the last one was that it spelled out exactly what the schedule was. This one says that you're going to establish annually by resolution a schedule. And these A to E are things that will be factored into the schedule that comes to you. So factored in will be that it starts at 7. And that's another one too, where, if I didn't highlight that, municipalities are starting at all kinds of different times. 4, 6, everything under the sun. This thing of it being held on 2 Mondays, that's basically been the practice, except it hasn't in August or December, and so we're identifying that. But this thing of it if it fell on a statutory, then it might be, you may, when you get your schedule, say, well, we don't want to push it back to the next Monday. We want to do it on the Wednesday like we did last year. And so then you can do that in your schedule. Or you might choose another day. You might say Tuesday, if there's no regional district meeting that Tuesday.
And I understand that. My problem is with the word "or." Council meeting may not be held that week, or another meeting day is chosen. I would put the word unless another meeting day is chosen.
Yeah, unless works.
Confusing.
These are all, like I say, guiding statements for us to prepare a schedule. They'll come to you in September for you guys to approve. And the 10:30 p.m. thing too, some municipalities are doing 10, some are doing 11. That's your...
10:30.
Councilor Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. Actually, I'm looking at 2A, and I'm wondering, historically, why council meetings start at 7 o'clock versus maybe 6 or 6:30. Because 7 o'clock, I mean, you know, I know if people work, that suits them sometimes better because it gives time to read. But 7 o'clock often means that meetings can go extremely well.
From my standpoint, thinking in terms not only of council being able to be here, but the public being able to be here, there's so many different variations that 7's kind of, in general, kind of everybody's done by 7. Or somebody, there's places of business, for example, that go at 5:30, which makes it difficult. Certainly for a 6, they might be able to make it 6:30. We've had council members over the years. Dave Scott comes to mind, where he, in his early term, struggled to get here for anything other than, say, 6:30 or later. Okay? So it's, and then with regards to the meeting itself, I mean, the meeting shouldn't be longer because we start earlier or later, but there is a tendency if you start earlier for it to go longer.
Yeah, maybe.
All I would ask is that if that 7 moved, so did the 10:30. So it left that window of a meeting length
Yeah.
the same without doing this. So what's consensus? Councilor?
Yeah, I prefer to leave it at 7. People, by the time they get home, they have their dinner, get their kids settled. It doesn't give them any time to be here by 6. And this is the residents' meeting too, so we want to do everything we can to encourage them to be here on time. And moving it, I think, won't do that. We see that, in fact, at our town hall meetings. The 5 o'clock one in 2014 had a lot less people than the one at 6 o'clock. So just an hour difference made a difference to the attendance of every meeting. It has a big impact on who can get there.
Councilor Swin?
Yeah, no, I think the 7 o'clock works well. And again, it just depends on what your situation is in your home life. So I think in general it works. And then again, for the residents, I think it gives them ample time to get here to the meetings. So.
Yeah, I agree. And the other shift schedule, I'm not sure if the hospital's still on 6 to 6, but the mill used to be like there's some 12-hour shift folks that 6 to 6 was the turnover as well. So 7 seems to be a magic number for early. But
unless there's a desire for now, let's leave it at 7 and go from there. Councilor Gorka?
Question on 5 to D. Applies to C, I guess, to a certain thing. It says shall not be held during the month of August. So it doesn't give us the option of having one, or if we wanted one, we needed something to deal with the special meeting.
Yeah. Councilor Folks?
2 things I want to throw out for contemplation. In 2014, we had the inaugural meeting, and there wasn't actually a regular council meeting for something like 2 months. It was into January.
Because there was just the one meeting in December, and it was early, and then with
Like the
the
first or
placement of
second.
January 1st, it
Yeah.
left a big stretch, yeah.
It seemed a long time. So I don't know if there's something we want to consider on that. I don't have a solution, but I thought I'd mention it. The other thing for consideration is regarding outgoing council and incoming council. The prior council before, like the 2011-2014 one, I get it wrong. They adopted the village core plan, or there's something with the village core plan that happened at the meeting after the election. I thought it was an odd thing to do, given that a new council was coming in essentially 2 weeks later. And so I don't know if there's language that we can do where basically, once the election's held, any decisions should fall to the next council.
Yeah, we can't write that in. Council broadly is a continuing body,
Yep.
and so therefore, regardless of the fact that the individuals are different, it still continues on based on law or legislation.
Yeah, and I don't want to sound petty, but I would have thought common sense might have dictated to leave some of these bigger initiatives to the new folks for 2 weeks.
You want to define that?
Well, no.
But the new council can always make a new motion to change whatever is transpiring. We were only receiving the draft report.
Right.
So, I think in new council, if they didn't like something, they'd be pretty quick to make a motion to make a change on it.
And regarding
Our bylaws are fluid.
the December meeting schedule in an inaugural year, I've seen in a lot of places where they only have one regular meeting, partly because of the holiday schedule, but also to allow them time to have special meetings for orientation. Now, I know that year there wasn't, but it was more to do with lack of availability of council members to attend the special meeting for the orientation. So, it's pretty common that there's a heavy schedule of meetings, like the second week in December in an election year.
And it's a great time for vacation.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, anything else on part 2? Part 3. Just had one item, tree, Part 8, Item 3, the very end is talking about if both mayor and acting mayor aren't available, the choose a councillor to preside until the mayor arrives. Should that also be mayor or the member designated?
Yeah, I think it should. It's right out of the template, but I think it should. Mayor. Sorry, which? And number 3?
8.3. So right at the very end there, until the mayor or the member designated under Section 8 bracket 1 arrive.
And actually, sorry, I'm wrong. That is wording that we put in there.
Okay.
Because it's, So what they have in the template for Clause 4 is that the acting mayor has the same powers as the mayor.
Yeah.
And that's, that's a given. That's, again, maybe that'll be one of the ones that
I
we're
didn't
doing
know
a
if it was
reference from the
explicit,
community
right.
charter.
Councillor Colson and Councillor Reservoir.
I have a question noted in my thing here. How is the rotation established? Is it completely random?
Pretty much.
And that's a good question because that is something they put in their little bulletin thing of things you might want to consider. And it's like,
Experience.
how do you establish?
Yeah.
No, it was just a sort of a blanket. How are you going to establish a schedule? And every place does it differently. Like some of them do it, they draw straws. Some of them do it alphabetically. Some of them just commit that they're going to do it every 6 months. There's just every scenario. So again, it's what you want as a body, what you think is reasonable.
It's probably worth clarifying. Just goes back to Council 1.0. I think I was the first one on the rotation, and I had a squad experience. So yeah, we readjusted it. I think at the first meeting or something like that. Yeah,
Rookies get first
We moved it to the back of the list.
yeah.
Anyway, doesn't matter.
And for staff bringing forward the list, it would be awkward for us to suggest any member of council is less qualified to take on the role than another. So it's,
So are you looking for direction within that?
If you want to change what's there.
Sounds like we should maybe clarify how we should do it.
Councillor Colson?
Well, it's one of those things where it might even include the mayor phoning people to see, would you be able to do it for the first section, or are you interested? Or like you say, you have people who maybe have been on the council for 2 or 3 terms and somebody who's a rookie. Makes sense to me to put the person with more experience first, let the rookie come on board and spend a few months on council, get the gist of things. So I don't know if you can define a set of rules and cover all those things off.
No, but at the very least, do we make a statement that could be determined at council's discretion or something like that, so staff's not on the hook to prepare this rotation?
Well, the actual vote on it itself occurs at the inaugural meeting. So council does technically decide it.
Yeah.
So council could have that discussion at the inaugural meeting in that regard.
I was just going to add that in other places I've worked, it's really been the mayor-elect who meets with the members of council and sort of goes over a few things like that and what their comfort level is, and particularly in relation to their availability. Sort of explain to them that the schedule, like in every place is different too, whether they're putting forward a 2-month schedule, a 3-month schedule, that varies. And now with 4-year terms, it was different doing up the schedule. But because for some of them, they could be already planned a big trip somewhere, or they're not going to be available because of work schedules or whatever. So
That's what Olson and then Council.
My suggestion on here was square root of your age times height divided by weight.
I do remember that.
That's getting into personal information. I mean the age thing. Councilor Gissler.
Okay, section 9(4).
Okay, that means we're into council proceedings part 4.
No,
Yeah?
oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
8-4?
If I've skipped too quickly, just let me know.
So Councilor Golson, do you want staff to come and do a quick phone around and see what other people do? Or are you okay with just council establishing?
I really don't care, I just thought I'd mention it and see if you had a suggestion.
Okay, part 4, council proceedings.
All right, 9(4). This provides that the mayor or the councilor designated mayor may expel or exclude from a council meeting a person. But then it goes on to say in accordance with section 19(8), which is a section which refers specifically to council members who might get the boot. So I think this needs to be clarified that it's, does this refer to a member of the public? And do we have a big sergeant at arms that we want to appoint? So I think that needs to be cleaned up somehow because it's tied to 19(8).
Well, there's within the community charter, the obligations on the part of the mayor includes that meeting aspect, so that implicitly gives the power to kick, for example, a disruptive member of the public out. But council members, no. Which is why this section exists.
I'd have to turn to Trudy at that point, Your Worship, because I think the only mechanism to manage an unruly council would to ask for a quick vote to adjourn the meeting, I believe. Trudy, would that be the only mechanism?
Yeah, this is from the template. I keep going back to that, but that is the wording in the template that it's meeting in person. And then when you got to 21(8), which is conduct and debate. So it's not 21 in ours, right?
Oh, okay.
This is
Okay.
It says if a member does not adhere to subsection 7, the presiding member may order the member to leave the member's seat. And if the member refuses to leave, the presiding member may cause the member to be removed by a peace officer.
Yeah.
So that is from the wording from the province.
So
here in a couple hours.
So my suggestion, we haven't defined person, but I think that's pretty generic, but I think we should, in this section, say a member of the public. This should be specifically a member of the public who can get the boot, and not make any reference to section 19(8), which governs how you politely ask a councillor to hit the road.
Sorry, what are you proposing?
So 9 should just say, may expel or exclude from council meeting a member of the public, period.
Based on what?
Based on this bylaw.
Obligations for
But for what?
Yeah.
They didn't like color their hair? Like what?
Well, then,
You
but,
can have a tone because they were upset, or what?
okay,
You know,
well, that's,
there's
no, I agree that it has to be defined. Because if you just simply say 19.8, what does it say here? It just says if the member refuses to leave, if the member apologizes, it doesn't, 19.7, however, talks about how we should conduct ourselves at council meetings.
But all of 19 is about members.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Whereas
it's all about members.
Just for credit.
Your Worship, my comment to that would be, you'd be able to deal with a member of the public, quote unquote, by saying something along the lines of, whereas a member of the public is causing such disruption to the meeting where order is not able to be reestablished, or something along those lines. Put some parameters in. I hear Councillor Gaines' comments, which is fairly fair. So if you're establishing this is a council meeting, and if they're disrupting the major tenet of what everybody's here for, and council has attempted to regain order and is unable to regain order, then that would fall into the ability to have somewhat of an obstruction at that point.
I just remember the meeting, the inner route, and Frank Ney was presiding, and all of a sudden Les Malvin came in with a big huge corkscrew shouting, "Screw the people!" and Pat Barron was ringing the bell, and Frank just kept hammering and hammering, and it just unending. But I think you have to have something in there that it's either totally in the mayor's discretion, and he'll live by the sword or die by the sword. But obviously, disrupting a meeting, using foul language, etc., we want to define limited or including, but not limited to the following problems. I think you have to work on this section.
We also keep any decision of the chair is challengeable by the members of the council.
That's
So
right.
if the chair got out of hand,
Yeah.
you just can make a motion or something to overrule a decision, direction, or otherwise as the chair. So as long as we don't all lose it, we're good to go.
Well, couldn't you then just turn that around and make that expulsion at the discretion of council rather than there?
Then you run into a bit of a problem recognizing the community charter tasks the chair with the good order of the meeting.
Yeah.
So until they actually make that decision for good order, it's not challenging.
we'll work on this section and bring it back. I think this is one of the ones that there's reference in the community charter to the mayor expelling members of the public. Because I have vivid memories in Squamish that we had a script and that the mayor could read. But it wasn't defined in the procedure bylaw. It was, of course, based on her judgment and all that stuff. So, yeah.
A little worried the fact that it's Councilor Hain questioning the judgment all the time. Councilor Isabel.
If we're through with this section.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I got a couple.
Okay, so Councilor Mary.
We're under council proceedings, right?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a suggestion that in trying to explain this as succinctly as possible, I think maybe may expel or exclude from the council meeting a member of the public whose behaviour is impeding the order of business, or will not be called, refuses to be called to order, or words in, so that it's a very, very succinct phrase that conveys the idea that if you can't behave yourself and you become so disruptive that you're impeding the order of business, you may be asked to leave. I mean, actually enforcing it is a different matter because we don't have an officer of the law on the premises usually, unless he's giving us a report.
So my experience has been we didn't have someone on the premises either. We just council adjourned.
Yeah.
He announced it, he warned, the behavior continued,
Yeah.
we recessed and they had to call the RCMP, we attended and took them away. Section 133 in the Community Charter says, if the person presiding at a council meeting considers that another person at the meeting is acting improperly, the person presiding may order that the person is expelled from the meeting. If a person who is expelled does not leave the meeting, the peace officer may enforce the order under subsection 1 as if it were a court order. So the charter speaks to it. Again, I think it's one of these ones that we'll put it in italics. We'll figure out something of how we're putting things in that take people back to the information that's in the charter.
Councillor Haynes. This is related to part 4 still? Councillor Castillo?
Yep. Under number 10, under the minutes, I would like us to do some work. I'm not totally comfortable. I don't quite like the minutes the way they are. I like them the old way. I'd like the recommendation to be part of the staff description and not there as a pre-done conclusion, the way we're doing it now.
Which this one?
I think what Councillor Haynes is referring to, it's not something that exists directly in here. You're referring to the recommendation being on the face of the minutes?
Yeah, I don't like that.
I think that's the agenda we're talking about.
Sorry, yeah.
That's on the
These are
agenda.
the minutes.
We need to go back to, there's an agenda section further ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
But my question with regards to the minutes of the meeting, when staff are videotaping, we're going to continue to add the public participation in the videotape portion that will go up on the internet?
It's part of the meeting.
Well, some people stop it. They don't put in public participation. They stop at the end. I don't know. But we'll carry
My
on.
intention was run from
Call
soft
forward to adjournment.
Okay. So the public comments will at least get reflected. And are we going to continue to reflect the public comments in the minutes?
That is up to council.
What specifically are you?
So right now we put very limited information in from the public. We just put name and just a very general topic. We don't really put a lot of detail in there.
Mr. McRae?
Yeah, and that's part of the concern that staff run into is that we don't want to be the interpretive master of somebody from the public, as if we get it wrong or we come across as incorrect. It's best in staff's view that we simply relay the topic that they had discussed and the person who indicated it. It keeps staff out of being politicized given the topic that is a discussion. We're simply presenting the information that's brought forward.
Okay, and it'll be on the video so they can go see what they said anyway. So that's fine.
Ms. Coates?
Yeah, and just to go over that, section 10 about minutes is right out of the template, but as I mentioned in the pre-opening there, some municipalities have done policies, some municipalities have added a bit more. That's council's decision. We certainly, action minutes has been in place for a long time in most municipalities and is the best practice.
On the same topic, Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, on the minutes. I know we knocked this around briefly at a former meeting, but I understand what staff is saying, but I also think we neuter the minutes far too much. So, Joe Blow talked about water. Well, if they had a concern about water or a compliment about water, well, we need to take it to another layer, I think. It would still keep it not politicized, but right now we don't really capture the true intent of a lot of the comments and do it justice.
Ms. Coates?
I think this might be a good discussion to have after you talk about your public input and public comment, or what are we calling it, clarification. Because it's all tied to purpose and business agenda. People who actually want business dealt with usually follow the agenda process and apply, give their explanation. It goes on an agenda, there's a report, there's information. If people stand up to make a comment about something, it's for the benefit of council hearing it, and you've heard it. So it's usually just reflected that this person stood up and spoke and made this comment. But like I say, you guys need to sort of figure out what you're doing with your public input sessions and whether there's going to be, sort of late items, extensive, or if it's actually business, or is it comments about what's on the agenda.
From my standpoint, because we're going to the district videotaping and providing it, if there's almost like a table of contents, so Bill Smith talked about water, let's say. Well, somebody can go, okay, well, I'm going to go look at the video and see what Bill Smith said about water. It takes a little more effort on the part of the individual, but kind of how far do you go in your description and your interpretation of it? Because there's been sometimes when somebody said, let's say somebody says something sarcastic, and you don't pick up on the sarcasm. Oh, I'm doing a great job. I like this guy. When in actual fact, it's so. Or alternatively,
That's where emoticons come in.
I'll just do the plus ones. Councillor Haynes?
Yeah, I got a few more. I have real problems with this deadline for submissions under number 13, moving it to 12 o'clock on the Monday. I can appreciate staff writing a budget or a time deadline, but as much as this is the council's agenda, it's the residents' council that's doing their business. And for me, this would give me no time to get an item on the agenda. I'd be looking at basically being a month out. Because for those of us that work, there's no way I could get something to staff by 12 o'clock on a Monday. So there's no way I could support a deadline of 12 noon on Monday. I appreciate you want to try and get the agenda to Thursday, but if we don't have items that are important, that are relevant and timely, what's the point of having an agenda? So I have a problem with that one. You want to talk about that first? Okay.
And there was a question about it that was submitted. And a similar question, why is the deadline for agenda items the Monday before a council meeting? What is the rationale to change it from the existing Wednesday? So one of the reasons to facilitate earlier agenda distribution to council to allow time so council can contact the CEO if they want to on a work day on a Friday, the week prior to the meeting if they have questions. It's also for the benefit of the public. So it's more transparent for them. So they're getting the agenda early. If the agenda is not out till Friday and the meeting is Monday, it's very limited time for the public to have a look at that and also do the same thing, ask questions about what's going on. The current schedule is for the CAO to review the agenda with the mayor on Tuesday, the week before the meeting. However, the agenda cutoff is Wednesday at 4, so the agenda is not final at the time of review. Receiving items at 4 p.m. on Wednesday challenges any kind of, there's no time for a staff review of the submission and preparation of the agenda for distribution on the Friday. Our goal has always been to put it out on the Thursday, but the bylaw says Friday, and when you're getting stuff late, it's often Friday. So it's certainly council's decision what you want to do. Your staff will work with whatever schedule you want us to work under. But there are municipalities where they're doing it the week before. Like the Friday, we're talking about Monday, Nanaimo's on the Friday the week before. There's other places too that are doing Monday, Tuesday, so that the agenda goes out on the Thursday for the following Monday meeting. So.
It doesn't really matter to me what other areas are doing. It's sort of what's worked here and what the expectation of the residents is here. I'll give you where I get frustrated. We had a resident, Mr. Polson, who tried to get on a council agenda. Sent in the submission, couldn't get on. So then he missed that council meeting, and this also applies to other residents. So then they ended up waiting. They got on the next agenda, submitted an application. Oh, you can't be on because that topic's now no longer on the agenda. So sorry, you lost your chance. So how does a resident get a chance to talk to their council if we don't give them a window of opportunity? Most issues arise at a council meeting one week, and traditionally residents can kind of see what's coming the next week. But if we've already passed the deadline for the next week's council meeting, we're 4 weeks away before they can even talk to us. That makes no sense to us. Then somebody will say, well, you can be a late delegation, only with unanimous consent of council. So
that's something we'll do.
so this whole thing is making it very difficult and super frustrating at the time.
Okay, just a question, Trudy, with regards to delegations themselves, is there anything within the procedure bylaw for somebody coming to our next meeting and talking about elves that live underneath the bridge?
They can't.
And the reason why I threw that out is because there's no way it's on our agenda. Is there anything to prevent the delegation from coming forward and saying, I want to speak to the problem of elves under bridges.
Yes, in a procedure ballot, they can only talk to items on the agenda.
I think they can make submissions, but the corporate officer is supposed to be responsible to not put things on the agenda that are not within your powers. If we don't have legislation giving you the right to regulate elves, I guess that would not
Make a noise.
I'm just trying to flip to what we ended up with from what was in the bylaw.
Agenda. So I think, if I might guess, what Councillor Haines is getting at is the residents having the ability to come before us and speak to topics that are important to them without being regulated to death.
Don't need to be.
Which to me is separate from the timing as to when they submit their request.
Sorry, I just don't have the current procedure file on front of me. Trudy, would you give
It's in
me?
the agenda. So
Yeah, it's just over there. Can you just read the section that Councillor Haines is referring to?
in the draft? Or
Yeah, in the current.
existing? In the current? In the current, it says no person or group of persons wishing to appear before council may do so unless he or she is first notified the corporate administrator in writing in accordance with section 13. Such notification shall specify the matter or matters in which the delegation intends to present to council, and without the approval of council expressed by motion, no delegation shall address council on any matter not specified in the notification. Goes on, delegations to council shall be limited to 3.
So,
Any petition
Trudy.
presented.
Okay.
Under blank delegations.
Yeah, so I'm just, Trudy, just to let me understand this stuff. Does that not mean that if the delegation is going to refer to council about the elves living under the tree or the bridge, and they come and talk about space shuttles, that's not what they said they were coming to talk about.
That would be offside,
Yeah.
to my understanding.
But if they filed a delegation with you to talk about elves under the bridge, and they showed up to talk about elves about the bridge, that has nothing to do with, that's perfectly fine.
That's my understanding.
That's the way it reads. It reads
So-
it's going to be an item on the agenda.
And I was reading what's in the existing, is what I was asking.
The way that reads to me, Your Worship, is that, yeah, if you're going to say you're going to talk about something as a delegation,
Yeah.
that's what you talk about.
Yeah.
If you're going to talk about something and then you jump onto something else and go on an attack, you're shut down and gone.
Yeah, and that's my role as chair, is to say, hang on, this says this, how does this treat these two?
Remember, the public wants to talk about something, they can talk about something, as long as it's within the parameters of council, within it, whether it's legal, whether it's non-abusive, defamatory, which is why the corporate officer gets to step in and take a look and see what it's about.
Okay, and that's, similar to some of our other comments that are trying to define that
Yeah.
in terms of within our powers, let's say. Right.
So, and this section that's in the template, the 19:1 to 5, which is 17:1 to 6 in ours, is one that has evolved in many municipalities. Some of them have other requirements in there. And the important thing here is to get something that works for you. So what's in here now, that's open to your decision. I know there's been lots of innuendo about why Councillor Coulson, when he was a member of the public, could or could not get on an agenda, and it was something that had been reviewed with CAO and with Mayor when we were doing the agenda. It was also at a time of the election, and there are municipalities that have right in their procedure bylaw that during the election they suspend having delegations, or it's got wording to do with electioneering. And so there's all kinds of different variations that you'll see to this wording here.
Okay. Councillor Coulson, and look forward.
I'm going to be very diplomatic here, I hope. This is a positive step forward, because the way Councillor Haim outlined it, I was furious at the time. Tried once, missed the meeting because it was a special meeting, not a regular meeting. There was some technicality which was actually false. It should have been accepted. Second time I was told that my content matter wasn't on the agenda, and so it wasn't allowed to go as a delegation. On that side of things, I would like to see us clarify acceptance of delegations, because there appears to be some screening that happens at some level on what's acceptable or not. My comment there is we have to have something that works for residents, then us. If someone wants to come about talk about space shuttles, they have every right to. We have to listen to them. We can't pre-screen them and say, sorry, that's not a worthy topic. They have to have the ability. So, if we're now no longer limiting content to what's on agenda, that is great. Something else I think we need to do, though, is the timeline. It doesn't work. If the agenda deadline is the same day for us as the public, it doesn't work. There needs to be some window of time where the public can review the agenda and then decide, you know what, I'd like to come and speak on that before we vote. They need time to decide if they want to be a delegation or what have you, and possibly an addendum to an agenda package.
Councillor Carey.
Thank you, Richard. Under section 17 delegations, I don't see in there any reference to the concept that a delegation has to be addressing an item on the current agenda. The only reference that excludes anything is 17.6, which makes reference to an issue that is not considered to fall within the jurisdiction of council, which would, you know, include things like elves under bridges and space shuttles, unless somebody was building one in their backyard next door. I think it's pretty common sense. And even then, the individual has the right to appeal the decision to council. So I don't think that's an issue. As for in this particular procedure, I think, you know, it just lays it out. As for the submissions, I sympathise with people on the idea that, you know, I can't make it for 12 noon on Monday prior to the following Monday. The drawback, of course, is that, you know, the agenda, even council doesn't know necessarily, unless something's been referred forward, what's on the agenda coming up on the next Monday. That has been, the agenda is being drawn up by the CAO. There's consultation with the mayor after that draft has been put together. And then, you know, it's put together by staff and distributed at the end of the week. I even think I have a note here that Thursday is this feasible, because I generally don't get my agenda until at least Friday. If it's ready on a Thursday, it's kind of half and half. I'd say 50-50 whether I get my agenda finished and available to pick up on a Thursday versus a Friday. But unless we're going to preordain every single agenda 2, 3, 4 weeks ahead of time, I think you just have to kind of have an arbitrary time and day when submissions have to be made. The individual who wishes to make a presentation or wishes to speak to an item on the agenda and has missed the deadline still has that opportunity to come to the meeting, to appeal to council, to be heard as a delegation. Admittedly, you know, I missed the deadline, I have submitted some stuff late, and I've got my you know, supporting information here. It's up to council. Council owns that, whether they you know, allow that to happen. The new agenda order actually includes an item at 14F, which is a public input period, where individuals can come and give some input, briefly, albeit, but briefly to items and speak to items that are coming up on the agenda, versus having to wait until decisions have been made and then saying, well, it's a moot point now. So I think we can really get really convoluted on when is the right time to submit. Monday, Tuesday, whatever, but if the mayor and the CAO are meeting on a Wednesday, I would submit that Tuesday is the absolute latest deadline for the submission of public delegations. And, you know, yeah, people miss the deadline sometimes, and I've done it myself. and staff report kind of, but you know, you have to suck it up. You have to have some kind of procedural, some kind of procedure in place. Otherwise, you know, nothing gets done.
Councillor Coleman.
We talk about one thing at a time.
Yeah.
We seem to be talking about a whole bunch of, everybody's talking about a whole bunch of things. I have comments to make, and then we'll go on to something else.
Okay, the items related to deadlines, related to content and delegation, and all that's kind of interrelated. Because there's time aspects to it, there's content aspects to it, so
I'll just exclude myself from the rest.
Councillor Devereaux.
No, I sort of agree with Councillor Folcup, but germane is, I would prefer to see the deadline for agenda items to be Tuesday at 2 p.m. Why 2 p.m.? Because you might get out during lunch and get it here, and it's before 4 p.m., which, you know, nobody's going to look at it by 4 p.m. Tuesday by 2 p.m. Why Tuesday? Because Monday is usually after the whole, you know, the weekend, everybody's called somebody, what the hell's happening, and Monday, you know, what should I do, and usually by Tuesday you can get something together. So Tuesday at 2 p.m. would be my suggestion.
Councillor Bowles.
So what are the deadlines? So right now, it's a Wednesday, Friday split, I think.
Wednesday, 4 p.m., Friday.
Yeah, so I personally, I'm okay with the day shift back. So for like a staff and council deadline of Tuesday, being out Thursday, I would like to see the public be able to submit content up till Friday that week till 4 p.m. The reason being is generally it doesn't impact the package output by staff, I think, because if it's a delegation, the presentation is submitted. There really isn't a lot of stuff, I think, that the public submit that create a big workload to staff, typically. So that way it gives the public an opportunity to review the agenda, get prepared, and submit a request for delegation if they so choose. Councilor Nuri's comment on the agenda order, I think is a great one. I like where we're headed with that, because they speak before we're voting. That is a good step. And so I think just giving them the opportunity to become a delegation would be another worthy step. Second thing, in terms of the language in the delegation section, yes, this is much better, absolutely. What I would like to see is, if people are submitting a request to be a delegation, bring that to council. You know, if none are accepted, if 3 are accepted, council still should see what the submissions were, I think, so we're aware of who was trying to speak.
Councillor Newman and Councillor Swing.
Yeah. On the deadline thing, yeah, I was going to recommend we move it to Tuesday, so that's good. Tuesday at 2 works for me for council and our deadline. You know, the biggest reason is for things that come out of the meeting the night before. You know, if you got a notice of motion on the table from Monday night, you're going to have to wait forever to get it back on the agenda because it missed the agenda deadline on Monday.
Well, if there's been a notice of motion in a meeting, it's automatically.
It would, well, maybe, if you specify that one, but what are the other stuff that comes out of the meeting? You know, lots of stuff comes out of meetings where we make motions or we want to look at something.
Okay.
I just think
so
Tuesday makes more sense. So that works for me. I think, I still think we should at least keep the Wednesday 4 o'clock for the residents. I have a little bit of problem with the Friday thing, just because if you're a delegation, traditionally they like to see themselves listed on the agenda, and the agenda would already be out, so then they wouldn't be listed. That we'd have to amend every agenda to include them, which would get a little bit tedious. And then just on the public input, the 14F, which I like, how do you pick 15 or the 5? What if there's 8 people that want to speak?
First come, first served.
Well, who's first when they're all sitting there? They all put their hands up.
Yeah.
So that'll be
Okay.
interesting.
Yeah, let's address these other
Yeah.
things.
Sorry, I did use it.
Councillor Swing.
Yeah, through the chair to staff, it sounds to me you're pretty clear on what is most fluid for the business needs of Lanceville, and you'd like to have it moved to Monday. Is that what I'm hearing? That you'd like to have the submissions for Monday, like the deadline be moved to Monday to increase the fluidity of the business
Yeah.
That's all.
You need to remember that normally our day is 8 to 4.
Yes.
And so if something comes in at 4 on Monday, when we're dealing with it on Tuesday, and agenda review, there may be comments and things that need to go with it, and then copied and delivered on Thursday. Now, usually what we try to do is do it a day ahead, but that's one of the issues.
So you'd like it earlier? You'd like to get this process done earlier in the week?
Well, if council wishes to get their agenda Thursday, yeah.
So, yeah, and I like the whole idea
And if
of
the
that.
mayor's going to continue reviewing the CAO Tuesday morning, that's...
So, I'm totally like the idea of getting information out to our residents sooner. It's nice for us to get it sooner as well, but our residents also need to have it. And then also I like the idea of extending the deadline for the delegation presentation. So, the one thing I did know was just in looking at I should have lost my phone, it's the request form for delegations. Like in terms of the request, and maybe changing the name to that as a notification of appearing as a delegation. The request seems like that it's subject to more of a higher level approval or some process. But anyways,
Like begging.
yeah, begging.
Please,
Please come in and appear as a delegation, whereas opposed, is there a better word that can put in front of that point?
For me, when it comes to, I hear what staff saying, there's provision for late items to be added or an appeal if it's a case that somebody didn't coordinate, they can appeal to council. The 12 noon, 2 p.m. sort of thing, I'm just thinking if I'm a staff member and somebody walks in at 2:05, I got to tell them, sorry, not on the agenda, because it's 5 minutes late. The ability to, it's 4 o'clock, lock the door, makes it quite clear that something is late, period, without putting a staff member into that mix. It's just my thought. What day? I don't care. Because we have the opportunity to add anyways through the council. And if we're doing that too often, that tells us our deadline is wrong. Mr. McCarthy?
Just a couple of comments, Your Worship. Yeah. The first piece about the 2 p.m. matter. We have bits of discretion here and there that we're able to implement. If it's 2:01, 2:03, we're reasonable, rational, we use our discretion. 2:20 comes in, 3 o'clock, this is where you get in the thin of the wedge. So it really becomes a weird scenario to be put in. In saying that, a large majority of the reports and recommendations and directions are generally staff-driven. So the likelihood of us running up to the scenario where we have to pick at a 2:01 versus a 2 o'clock is relatively slim. But again, that's council's purview what they wish to do. In regards to the delegation of council seeing the submissions, my concern about that is now you're politicizing something and determining as a group of 7 whether it should or should not come as a delegation. The reasons we look at a delegation are the simple high levels of whether it's defamatory, whether it's illegal, whether it's criminal, whether there's certain things that are going to be offensive in nature of that delegation. That's pretty much our scope of things or what we have jurisdiction over.
But it says within the jurisdiction of council, which I took within our boundary of powers. We cannot regulate elves under the bridge. Versus the legal, like if somebody said, I'm going to come and shoot council, obviously you're not going to let them do the delegation, I hope. Where's that kind of discretion?
Well, and I guess it comes down to, Your Worship, is that if somebody wishes to come in and talk about, for instance, the doctor came in to talk about pharmaceutical-grade drugs being used on the streets and et cetera, et cetera. Well, that's outside the purview. That's a federal jurisdiction. But staff, it was perfect for the public and council to listen to. It was perfectly outside of the jurisdiction of council to manage, but it was an educational piece that was aware of. So the delegation piece does allow for staff to use our pieces in that while keeping things outside of, well beyond what council would ever deal with.
So far I've got the note down for the agenda submissions to Tuesday at 2 p.m. Was that concluded, or?
He's kind of all over the place. I don't think we're ever going to get complete agreement on that.
Could have a vote.
We could.
Have a vote.
Would you like to do that?
Yeah, I move Tuesday at 2 p.m.
This is a recommendation to
Oh, wait,
council.
I'm doing minutes.
Just that or the other components too?
What's
I got it.
the
Thank
The
you.
Wednesday, for the public.
How about if one step at a time?
One second.
One step. This is agenda.
Second it?
Discussion 2 p.m. Tuesday.
Is Councillor Colcott in the vote?
He can hear, he's right. He's just making coffee, you can hear.
Make 2 cups of coffee.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Now, keep in mind that's just a recommendation to council.
Sorry, Your Worship, I just object. Councillor
It's just a
Colcott,
direction to staff or
I
requiring
just need to check, are you
instructions.
voting in the affirmative for moving its recommendation to council Tuesday at 2 p.m.? Sure. Okay.
Okay, what next?
Then okay, so the public input period, that was it's just listed in, but we might take it out and do a little description of it, because it's got the sort of criteria, the 5 members of public speaking for up to 2 minutes each. You okay with that, or do you want it changed?
Have we skipped again?
She's talking to 14.
14F.
I thought we were still on.
What about 13.2?
What were we still on 13?
Oh, don't worry, she's on.
13.2?
Where was the one, John?
Everybody
For,
else on 13.
what about the last line in 13.2? In the event a meeting is held on a date other than,
Well, we'll make it work for what the count
Okay.
is for the Tuesday.
okay?
It'll be 5 working days, I think, so
Okay.
I'll work with that.
Anything else on 13?
Well, I was just thinking about a discussion on when the public got to submit.
So,
But if
and that was the one I wanted to comment on, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. No, I'm
So,
just gonna say,
Comment or submit? I think Councillor Colson's talking about when public, actually I lost what you
it's
got.
a delegation submission.
Is that what you're talking about?
yeah,
Yeah, so there was discussion about changing that to later in the week. The one thing I'd ask council to think about is the transparency of that. You know, if it should be in the agenda package. Like, people read the agenda package and hoping, the public, and then they decide, well, that's, delegation's going to talk about this, I might come to that meeting. If we don't have it in there and have it as a separate thing, it may be overlooked. And so,
Okay.
from that perspective.
Now that's in section 17?
17,
Okay,
yeah.
so let's kind of move towards that rather than skip it, which would then put us at 14.
Sorry, is that not 13.2, the deadline for submissions by the public to the corporate officer for inclusion in the council meeting agenda? Is it not there?
As opposed to
No.
delegations.
No, it's different.
That's
This is
different.
agenda, this is somebody submitting a business item,
Oh,
whether
okay.
it's staff,
Okay.
council, or the public.
Okay.
Over here is a delegation submission. We have got it at the same schedule. But what I was hearing was some discussion about.
Let's do a 14.
Okay.
So 14F. Councillor Neary?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a couple of questions for clarification. Item 14.1G, 1H, business arising from the minutes. I'm wondering what that refers to.
Yeah. I guess that's one of my holdovers, that I'm used to working with councils, that when you approve your minutes,
Yeah.
and those are approved, and then there's things that happened at that meeting
Yeah.
that were to be discussed at the next meeting, and it just seems timely to discuss them right after that.
Or maybe there's a loose end
Yes.
that's identified in
Exactly.
minutes that
Yeah.
needs some form of action
Yeah.
or
So
something.
business arising.
Okay.
Now, that's different than if, it's something that required a whole big report, and then it's
Yeah.
under the staff reports.
So, not anything substantive, that's what you're saying?
Not usually.
Not normal, unless there's a big glaring.
It's just, I've never seen that.
Sometimes it's actually a point where council members would actually ask me things like, oh, so this happened at that meeting, they've approved the minutes are done.
Yeah.
And then they say, oh, the arising out of that meeting was a
There's a
request
question
to
made.
do this, has that happened?
Or do you have an update on
Yeah.
some?
Yeah, okay,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Thank you. And the next one was 14.1I, consent agenda. I am not familiar with that. So I see the italicized explanation, but it still doesn't really give me any understanding of what it is.
And so this being our first kick of the can, I thought I'd just put it in there and it will generate some discussion. And then if you feel it's warranted, we can do the whole section on it. A lot of municipalities have this in their procedure bylaw. And what it means is that, maybe there's like 3 or 4 business items that are very routine items. And instead of it being done, each one separately, it's listed on the consent agenda. There's usually a little description that members of council may, when they get to that, take that item out and ask to have it dealt with separately. Otherwise, it's like one motion instead of 5 motions.
Okay. So a kind of housekeeping type enabling these odds and ends.
Yeah, things that you do routinely.
Councilor Giesler?
From my now extensive experience on the Vancouver Island Regional Library, they'll have 20 items on the consent agenda, and the chairman asked, are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda? So that, they can do that and vote on it, but generally it is housekeeping, staff recommendations, who's cleaning the lavatory in Port Alberni next weekend, that sort of stuff, and then boom, 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 it's one vote and it's gone.
Okay, so it moves business along more efficiently. Okay.
Some places have bylaws there too.
Mr. McRae?
I was just going to make reference for Councilman Murray's benefit. If council recalls the financial meeting we had with about 14 or 15 different read-offs that council had to go through every single one because we didn't have a consent agenda ability at that point. So council could have just removed a couple of items at that point to discuss and push through consent and save themselves about 20 minutes.
And all it requires is one individual objecting to pull
And it pulls it.
You don't need a vote.
So that's
separate.
an item that's up for debate because somebody doesn't actually support it
Right.
or wants to make that point. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Councilor Cole.
14.1J. Just would like to hear some conversation around bylaws. I know in some agendas the bylaws are beginning of the agenda because there's often people sitting there waiting to see us come. I know other agendas they're way at the end. People don't listen to any because they have to sit their way through. Just curious of what people's thoughts are on the pros and cons of where you put bylaws in the agenda.
Some of them are new business. Some of them are unfinished business that typically changes the order. When it comes to the aspect of the procedure bylaw itself, through a consent discussion or consent notice, something can always be moved to the front because there's a delegation sitting there. Or the end does it, there's 50 people there, we know they're all there for one thing, let's move it to the front of the agenda, get them that right. The firemen, for example, they don't want to be here, so it's got to go somewhere, General, but like I said, it can always be waived or filed if you want to file that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, that can be brought up and done at the time. Or the other thing I was going to mention is that in the template bylaw from 2004, where it has the one above it, public and statutory hearings, in the template it has and third reading or adoption of bylaws where applicable after each hearing. Some municipalities have included that in their procedure bylaw. Other ones have been dealing with it on a one-off, one-by-one basis. And sometimes it's because of sensitivity to the perception of, we have a public hearing, but we've already jumping in there. But absolutely, there's lots of land use bylaws that do get dealt with and adopted at the same meeting. But sometimes it's more cultural of whether you want that in your bylaw. I sort of erred on the side of caution and didn't put it, but if you like, you could add that.
Councillor Coulson.
14F, back to that one. I think we've got to remove the 5 members. That's to make it easier for us. If 50 people want to come and talk about something, they should be able to. That's our job to listen to them. So I think we've got to remove the cap, and I think it should be 5 minutes. The limit too. Do I make a motion, or we
Can do.
yeah?
How about if we let Mr. McCready speak first?
Sure.
I can appreciate Councillor Coulson's comments on that. Everybody should be able to speak. Staff's response back to that are, if there are 50 individuals that each want to come in and speak to a single topic and make a protest or something along those lines at 5-minute intervals, Council has acknowledged that they will do that, and will be here until sometime very late. Council needs to consider whether that's going to be used for time, whether they should appear as an individual delegation. Those are my comments.
Councillor Sweeney.
Yeah, I like the idea of removing the cap. However, I think it should remain 2 minutes. Because people should be able to get their messages across in a concise fashion when you're speaking directly to an agenda item, and should be speaking maybe some other stuff at that time that maybe has nothing to do with that agenda item. But I think 2 minutes is an ample amount of time to get your message across on those specific agenda items.
Councillor Hayman, and I'll come back to Councillor.
What if, I've been in meetings where we've had 30 delegations when I sat on the RDM. It's a long night. Could we, and it may just be at the discretion of council, but could we not put limited to a maximum of 5 members, or at the discretion of council of the public speaking? Give us the opportunity, if we want to hear more, we can hear more, because this is very definitive, limit to a maximum. What can we add? Something that says,
Council orders otherwise?
yeah, just something to give us the flexibility that if we have 6, then we can deal with that, right? We're not trying to pick and choose who.
Yeah, because again, this is one of the ones that's in italics, and we'll bring it out and put it in its own section to sort of define it. And absolutely, it's expected that any procedure that's in the procedure bylaw, council has the right to suspend the orders and do as you wish, with the exception of the ones that are mandatory. And I just want to highlight too that this says excluding public hearing topics, because of course if there's a public hearing,
You have to listen.
that's right. And then if it's closed, the public hearing, then I can't comment anyway. And if it's an item where 50 people show up, I'm thinking we need to have a special meeting just about that subject. Yeah, so council always has this ability. But we'll expand that.
Sorry, Your Worship. I don't mean to interrupt Council's process at this point. I've just received some information, and I'm wondering maybe if Council, if we could move to your second item on the agenda, Your Worship.
Second,
The closed portion of the meeting.
We need to recess this one.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion to recess. Moved by Councilor Murray, second by Councilor Colclough. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Sorry, I missed the seconder. Was Colclough and Mary? Thank you.
Yeah.